So a lot has happened in the past 24 hours. A source tells NBC News that Michael Cohen has provided lawmakers with documents that show edits to the false written statements he made to Congress in 2017 about a proposed Trump Tower in Moscow. At that time, Cohen and the president's legal team had a joint defense agreement. The documents were meant to bolster his testimony to the House Intel Committee last week that Donald Trump's legal team made changes to his statements.
Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow Tower negotiations before I gave it. There were changes made, additions. Jay Sekulow, for one.
Jay Sekulow says he stands by his statement made last week that Cohen's testimony about those edits is, quote, completely false. The chair of the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff, says lawmakers may request more documents from Cohen, who in turn said he will continue to cooperate. He came out yesterday saying it went well, and he plans to do everything he can. Joe.
Let's bring in Emily Jane Fox. Emily, obviously you've been following the Cohen saga closer than anybody, or certainly as close as anybody. Yesterday, a fairly significant day because Donald Trump, of course, spent the campaign saying he didn't know anybody in Russia. He had no business dealings in Russia. There was nothing to do with this Trump Tower. Now we're hearing his lawyers actually may have edited Cohen's remarks and actually caused him to perjure himself before Congress. What can you tell us?
You know, I think one of the most stunning images of the past week, which has been a fairly stunning week when it comes to Michael Cohen, was Cohen entering Capitol Hill yesterday with 3 suitcases and a big file folder. I think that to me was a moment that must have struck fear in President Trump, in his family, and anyone who works in the Trump organization. I know from my reporting that before his public testimony, he spent time digging through boxes in a storage unit to find documents that backed up some of his claims. And he spent this past weekend, before he went back to Capitol Hill yesterday, doing some more document diving. And that is what was able to allow him to bring more documents yesterday about these kinds of edits and about communication he had with lawyers representing various members of the administration about the kinds of changes that they wanted to see made.
You know, Emily, this has been quite a personal journey for Michael Cohen, who has felt betrayed by Donald Trump and the entire Trump family, felt betrayed that Rudy Giuliani could go from saying he was a great lawyer to one of the biggest liars ever, to those Republican members of Congress all calling him a liar. How can we believe a liar? That's all we heard. How can we believe you, Michael Cohen? You're a lawyer. I wonder what Michael Cohen thinks of this poll and what Donald Trump thinks of this poll and what Republicans think of this poll. When asked, who do you believe more, Michael Cohen or Donald Trump? Donald Trump at 35%. Michael Cohen, convicted perjurer, 50%. Give us some insight into his thinking on the fact that by more than double digits, Americans believe Michael Cohen far more than they believe Donald Trump.
I mean, what a sad state of affairs that number is, that the American public believes someone who admitted to lying to Congress more than their own president of the United States. I think that Cohen felt like he went to Congress and did what he needed to do. I think the fact that he brought documents with him, those suitcases this week and the documents that he showed publicly last week, I think that is why you see the big discrepancy. And I think that Cohen was pleased with that. But I think, you know, there are still questions about his credibility. He still had to spend 16 hours in front of the House Intel Committee. He spent 7 hours being questioned publicly and 9.5 hours the day before in front of the Senate. And I think he's exhausted. He's continuing to cooperate with the SDNY. And in less than 2 months, he's still plans to report to federal prison. And so any kind of relief that he has about his testimony and the sort of switch in the way that the public thinks about him, I think is welcome. But he still is facing some very serious things in short order.
Yeah. Mika, what do you think of those numbers? What do you make of because I must say, we've known Michael for quite some time. And on a personal level, I've liked Michael for quite some time. But didn't seem to have great credibility, to say the least, because his job was to lie for Donald Trump for decades. And yet you were telling me you were surprised by the reaction you heard about Michael Cohen, that he was actually a sympathetic witness, especially the Republicans made him far more sympathetic, too.
Yeah.
But are you surprised by those numbers showing that 50% of Americans believe Michael Cohen to only 35% believing Donald Trump?
You know, a lot of this is optics and, not based on facts. It's based on feelings and reactions. And I think Michael Cohen came off well. Michael Cohen admitted to lying, which is something the president still hasn't done. And I think as certain news outlets keep track of his lies, they happen on a daily basis. And Michael Cohen stood before the cameras. People have seen him walking out of court with his family. You heard Elijah's impassioned closing on the day of his public testimony, talking about the image of him walking out of court with his daughter, and Michael Cohen cried, wept openly. It was the only time he did. And he comes across as credible. Now, it is quite clear that he has lied. He has said he has lied. He's going to jail. But again, the difference between him and the president, that the Republicans who were grilling him in almost a cruel fashion, leering at him for going to jail, asking if he's going to enjoy that, protecting a president who lies every day. I think people got that. A lot of people, and that's why you see those poll numbers.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.